Recent regional developments have prompted heightened vigilance across the state of Kuwait, particularly following reports of intercepted aerial objects in the country's airspace. The Ministry of Defense announced that since the start of aggression on the state of Kuwait, the ministry intercepted 255 ballistic missiles and 549 drones. Defense systems successfully intercepted and neutralized most of them in efforts to prevent any material damage. The ministry added that the armed forces, in full cooperation and coordination with various military, security and the state agencies, affirmed their ability to continue performing their duties and responsibilities with the highest levels of readiness and efficiency, ensuring security and stability of the country under the wise leadership of His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Mish'al Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, may Allah protect and bless him, the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, and His Highness the Crown Prince, Sheikh Sabah Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, may Allah protect him. These developments have highlighted the importance of preparedness and coordination between Kuwait's security institutions. Civil defense teams, emergency responders and security forces have been deployed to assess affected areas, remove debris and provide assistance where necessary. Despite these incidents, officials continue to emphasize that the internal situation in Kuwait remains stable and under control, with government institutions working together to maintain public safety and operational continuity. Their mission remains clear: protecting Kuwait's solidity, security and territorial integrity. As regional tensions continue to escalate, Kuwait has moved swiftly and decisively to ensure the safety of its citizens and the stability of its essential services. From the very first signs of escalation, government institutions across the country have activated comprehensive precautionary measures and plans designed to contain any potential spillover effects and maintain normal life across all sectors. Key ministries including Health, Defense, Interior, Oil, Commerce, Information and Education are working in close coordination, implementing proactive measures that range from securing vital infrastructure and ensuring medical readiness to maintaining food supply chains and reinforcing national security. Here's the story.
The state of Kuwait has consistently demonstrated proactive and rapid measures to safeguard national security and ensure continuity amid evolving regional developments. The country's approach is marked by the coordination of all ministerial bodies and government authorities encompassing defense, security, customs, and civil administration, reflecting a unified commitment to protecting the nation's stability, sovereignty, and public welfare. These efforts highlight Kuwait's emphasis on the vigilance, preparedness, and operational integration across all sectors responsible for the country's security and resilience. The first Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Interior, Sheikh Fahd Yusuf Saud Al-Sabah, conducted an inspection tour of northern border centers, critical security sectors, and the Abdali border crossing, accompanied by senior security officials. The visit focused on evaluating operational readiness, field procedures, and the welfare of deployed personnel. Emphasizing the importance of national security, Sheikh Fahd underscored the need for continuous vigilance, strict measures against any attempts to disrupt public order, and comprehensive coordination between security and military sectors to ensure full protection of the homeland. His visits included the Coast Guard, where he assessed maritime readiness and the level of coordination, ensuring security border control. These engagements reinforced morale, highlighted discipline among personnel, and demonstrated the government's dedication to frontline security forces, especially during times of heightened risk. Simultaneously, the General Administration of Customs has implemented adaptive emergency plans to maintain the flow of goods and supply chains, especially amid regional tensions. This involved rerouting shipments, updating procedures at air, land, and sea entry points, and leveraging human and technological resources to prevent disruption to essential imports. The administration's efforts ensured uninterrupted access to food, medical supplies, and strategic reserves while maintaining efficient traveler processing and operational oversight from central control units. In parallel, the public prosecution has actively investigated cases threatening state security, including attempts to liaise with the aggressors, applying full legal measures in coordination with relevant authorities to preserve sovereignty and enforce strict accountability. Overall, Kuwait's coordinated national efforts reflect the seamless integration of all ministerial bodies and government authorities working collectively across security, defense, legal, administrative, and logistical domains. From border patrols and maritime operations to customs oversight, legal enforcement, emergency management, and civil administration, every sector contributes to a resilient framework capable of anticipating threats, responding decisively, and safeguarding public welfare.
Due to the escalation and unprovoked attacks by Iran, the state of Kuwait has reiterated its strong commitment to safeguarding its sovereignty and protecting its national security in light of recent regional developments. Government officials have emphasized the importance of respecting international law and avoiding actions that could escalate tensions across the region. The Kuwaiti cabinet affirmed that national institutions remain fully prepared to address any development that may arise while continuing to safeguard citizens and residents. Officials stressed that maintaining stability and protecting national interests remain key priorities for the government. Now we're going to go with our on-field reporter, Khalid Al-Hajji. Khalid, if you are listening to me, tell us exactly where you are and the latest updates you have.
Here from Al-Asma Mall in Kuwait City, one of the busiest malls in Kuwait. From what I can see here is the situation is like any normal day. People are here shopping, and also you can sense from inside how they are feeling safe, as well as how they are shopping
as well
normally.
as how they are shopping normally, and everything is fine. As you can see, people are staying here having a drink or a coffee or even shopping in the shopping mall. Also, due to security reasons, you can see policemen walking through the whole mall. Also, when I came inside the mall, I saw some firemen and a fire truck outside the mall. They are ready and prepared, Abdurrahman, for any incident if happened, and inshallah nothing will happen, but they are there, present. Their presence is there if anything happened due to the whole situation running in the region. Overall, Abdurrahman, the place here is like any normal day. It may be not that crowded, because in those peak times we are used for Al-Asma Mall to be more crowded than what I can see here today. But at the end, it shows like a balance between people that want to go out shopping and also still enjoy the Eid vacation. I know the 3 days of Eid has finished, but today is still a vacation for most of the ministries in Kuwait. So people want to go out and enjoy those days, but also they are cautious about the whole situation running in the region. So you can feel the balance between going out shopping and also taking care of themselves.
Khalid, now, given the security measures being taken, you mentioned that there is security present at Al-Asma Mall, and regardless of that, Khalid, the general atmosphere at Al-Asma Mall, the general movement and the normal life is running smoothly and as normal, right? There's nothing unusual about that. There's just the security measures, which is a precautionary measures being taken. Nothing else being happened, right?
Yes, exactly. As I mentioned, nothing at all that is unusual for us. It's like any normal day. The only thing that is unusual that even before, by the way, policemen are centered in the malls, but they are not inside the mall walking through the halls and everything. But they may be the only unusual thing that I saw since I was here. But also, it's for our safety. Nothing more, nothing less.
Also, Khalid, there is also one more question I'd like to ask you, is that there's lots of rumors since the conflict began that people go for stockpiling, buying more stuff and spending more on necessary things. Do you see stockpiling from where you are, or spending is normal? People are acting differently, normally as they used to do before the conflict?
Well, Abdurrahman, to be honest, with the stock buying, I saw that maybe at the beginning of the whole situation. For maybe the first day, even only the first day, people went to the cooperative to take like water bottles, and that was the most thing that I saw people stocking it. But after the first day, everyone sensed that everything is there and everything is provided for us. You don't need to do that, and everything will be fine. So they are more cautious about this thing now, and I can't see it anymore. People are just shopping their necessary things and going out like for shopping of clothes or even from the cooperative. It's just the necessary things. I don't see that stockpiling anymore.
Khalid, and also one more thing before we let you go. From your observation, can we say that people have a sense of trust to the government precautionary measures and trust of the government's commitment and dedication to maintaining everything stable? Or do you think that people might be uncertain? But I think from what you observe, that people are maintaining stability and have trust in the measures taken, right?
100%, Abdurrahman. From what I can see here, if those whole people are not 100% in full trust of the government and the whole ministries that are defending us, you won't see anyone out here. Life is so important to us. I don't want to die at any second. But people going out, this shows that they 100% trust the government and trust everything issued by them. Also confident that if anything happened, and inshallah nothing will happen, there are people that will protect us, and they are working every single hour just to do this thing.
Khalid Al-Hajji from Al Asma Mall, our on-field correspondent. Be safe and thank you for the latest update. Now, dear viewers, as the Middle East faces a wave of escalation amid continued Iranian aggression and rising regional tensions, questions are intensifying over the position of global powers, particularly China, balancing deep economic interests with the Gulf states alongside strategic ties with Tehran. Beijing finds itself navigating a complex geopolitical landscape. The upcoming report will examine whether China will maintain its neutral stance, align with Iran, or prioritize its expanding partnerships and long-term investments across the Gulf region. Here's the story.
当前中东的战火仍在
As tensions in the Middle East intensify amid continued Iranian escalation across the region, China's strategic positioning reflects a careful and calculated balance between competing interests rather than a clear alignment with any single actor. Beijing's foreign policy in the Gulf has long been guided by principles of non-interference, economic pragmatism, and strategic neutrality. While China maintains a strong political and economic ties with Iran, it has simultaneously deepened its partnership with the Gulf Cooperation Council states, particularly in the fields of energy, infrastructure, and long-term investment. This dual-track approach places China in a position where neutrality is not only preferred but necessary to protect its broader geopolitical and economic objectives. China's relationship with Iran is rooted in energy security and strategic cooperation. Tehran has historically been an important supplier of oil to China, particularly under conditions where Western sanctions are limited to Tehran's market access. In addition, both countries share a degree of alignment in opposing Western dominance in global affairs. However, this partnership remains largely transactional rather than ideological. China has consistently avoided military commitments to Iran and has refrained from offering direct support in times of regional confrontation, and instead emphasizing diplomacy and de escalation. At the same time, China's economic engagement with the Gulf states has expanded significantly in recent years, often surpassing its ties with Iran in scale and strategic importance. GCC countries, including the State of Kuwait, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, are among China's largest energy suppliers and key partners in the Belt and Road Initiative. These partnerships extend beyond oil and gas into infrastructure development, technology cooperation, logistics, and finance. The Gulf serves as both a critical source of energy for China and a key pillar in its broader strategy for global trade integration. As such, Beijing has strong motivation to preserve stability in the Gulf and avoid alienating its Arab partners. In light of recent attacks, including those targeting strategic facilities such as Kuwait's international airport, China is expected to continue emphasizing restraint and dialogue rather than taking sides. Official Chinese responses to regional escalation have consistently called for respect for sovereignty, de escalation of tensions, and the resolution of disputes through political means. This diplomatic language reflects China's broader objective of maintaining balanced relationship with all parties while positioning itself as a potential mediator rather than a participant in conflict dynamics. Significantly, China's long term strategic calculus suggests that it is unlikely to side decisively with Iran at the expense of its Gulf relationships. The economic weight of the GCC, combined with the stability these states offer for Chinese investment, makes them essential partners, and any overt alignment with Iran in a military or confrontational sense would risk undermining China's access to Gulf markets, energy supplies, and strategic projects. Therefore, Beijing's approach is expected to remain one of the careful stability, maintaining ties with Iran while prioritizing broader regional stability and economic continuity. In addition, China's posture amid escalating tensions in the Middle East can best be understood as strategic neutrality shaped by economic interest and geopolitical caution, rather than choosing between Iran and the Gulf. China is likely to continue navigating a middle path, engaging all parties, advocating de escalation, and safeguarding its long term interests in the region. As the region comes under increasing pressure, this balancing act will remain a defining feature of China's role in the evolving regional landscape.
Now, with tensions raising, global attention is also turning toward Beijing, a key economic player with deep ties to both Iran and the wider Middle East. China remains one of Iran's most important trading partners and energy customers, while at the same time maintaining strategic relationships across the Gulf, placing it in a uniquely sensitive position as tensions rise. To help us understand the economic implications and how China is navigating this complex landscape, we are joined by Qinduo Xu, Senior Fellow at the Pangol Institution. Mr. Xu, after a very warm welcome, please let's get to it. China is Iran's largest trading partner and a major buyer of its oil. So how exposed is Beijing economically to the current escalation, given the disruption that is happening in the Strait of Hormuz? Mr. Xu.
Thank you for having me. Well, I would say, I think the Chinese exposure to this energy disruption in terms of its flow out of the Strait of Hormuz is probably worse than expected. Because what happened today is a story about a very important Chinese energy company, Sinopec. It issued a statement that basically said that because of a lot of our cargoes somehow were unable to navigate through the Strait of Hormuz, we will purchase oil and other products from Saudi Arabia and change the route to the Gulf of Aden. And I think that statement reveals that the Chinese exposure to the disruption probably is worse than expected. So as time goes on, and of course the Chinese side, the company also said that they are preparing for a long-term situation closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And I think that's kind of like an emergency measures from the Chinese side, because the company itself is one of the a few major player in terms of energy structure in this country. So that's quite revealing. And secondly, of course, is beyond energy, beyond gas and oil, is about the Chinese investment. Very important destination, Gulf countries, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and also very important market for the Chinese products, for example, EV, etc.
Now, Mr. Xu, to expand on what you've said, China has built deep economic ties across the Middle East, not just with Iran, but also the Gulf producers. How is Beijing balancing its relationships amid the rising regional tensions?
That's a good word, balance. Actually, what I want to explain is that China is not really trying to balance between Iran and the Gulf countries. I think for China, China doesn't see a problem in terms of the relationship with Iran or in terms of this relationship with Gulf countries. China sees them as friendly nations in terms of relationship with China. It's not through the lens of Washington. Of course, Washington and Western countries largely view Iran as a problem, as a challenge. In particular, its nuclear program. On that point, I think there is common ground between Beijing and Washington. And both sides, both nations are against nuclear development in Iran. They are against the nuclear bombs. Definitely, that's for sure. The difference is in terms of means, the Chinese side stresses very much about following international rules, give the IAEA an important role in terms of monitoring and scrutinizing the Iranian development. But the U.S. side, obviously, in particular this time around, they took a very drastic measure in launching attacks against Iran. So this is worsening the situation. Given that, I would say China is a country, they would say, we would deal with the countries. At the same time, we will follow the UN rules. If there are sanctions from the US, not from the UN Security Council, China would go ahead and do business with any countries, Russia, Iran, because China would say, we should not let the unilateral practice rule the world. We should let the UN Security Council resolutions rule the world in a narrow sense. So China developed a relationship with Iran on this reciprocal approach, following the UN resolutions. At the same time, of course, China has a much stronger relationship with the Gulf countries, I would say. In particular, we enjoy a very strong relationship with Kuwait.
Yeah, and strategically speaking, to what extent could this conflict reshape China's long-term strategy in the region, especially that we're speaking about securing energy routes, for example, and protecting the Belt and Road investments?
That's a good point. It's a good question. I think for China, this is not only, disruption of this temporary. We don't know how long it is. Disruption of the flow of energy and oil, and also this investment and transportation of goods made in China products. It's also about the much larger, as you said, a larger initiative like the Belt and Road Initiative. This is a very important part of this initiative. Many people see that's a strategic because that's part of the Chinese rise. In the strategic sense, the rise, in a peaceful way through investment and manufacturing, rather than military alliance, rather than military strikes against other countries. That's obviously the disruption there. And previously there's a disruption with Venezuela, but China tries very hard to be flexible, try to fix the problem through probably multiple means, rather than sending troops or seeking confrontation with the U.S. So right now it is a challenge, I would say a serious challenge for China, because it's not only about China and it's about the Gulf countries. For China understands the Iranian sentiment, being attacked without UN Security Council resolution basically is an illegal invasion of Iran. China understands the Iranian sentiment. At the same time, China is against Iranian practice of attacking Gulf countries, in particular, non-military targets. China has made that very clear because the Gulf countries, they are innocent in a sense, right? And maybe the Iranians can say, can justify their attack on the U.S. military bases. But still, if there are some injuries and damages to the infrastructure, in particular, energy facilities, that's very damaging, and China is very concerned with that. I think the Chinese side has been talking to the Iranian side. The image, the signal is very clear. China is against that, but China also understands the situation is not going to conclude very soon, especially after the U.S. side, threatened to have even graver attack on Iran in 48 hours ultimatum. That kind of a threat is not helping with the situation. So I think right now the card is really, or the ball is in the court of the U.S. It's really up to Washington in what way they want to end this crisis.
That's clear. Now, given China's emphasis on diplomacy and de-escalation, Mr. Xu, do you see Beijing evolving into a credible mediator in Middle Eastern conflicts, or will it remain primarily an economic actor focused on safeguarding its interests only?
That's a great question. That's a strategic choice, basically, for China. Right now, China is more on the side of an economic player. Trade, largest trading nation, strong relationship with 140 economies. China, is the largest trading partner of them. But at the same time, many people are, internally discussing this issue. What China should do to help mitigate the crisis. Should China talk to Iran? Should China talk to the U.S.? Or should China to work together with Russia, with the U.S., and with Iran probably to sit on the same table and make sure, that some of the demands from the Iranian side obviously probably will be met. At the same time, the Iranians also need to make a promise not to develop nuclear weapons, for example, and also should not disrupt the flow of goods through this Strait of Hormuz. So it's both sides. I think that Washington should make some concessions or compromise to kind of like a promising not to attack Iran again and to follow UN rules. To follow this international law if there are issues. And I think ultimately it's really about kind of like an agreement similar to previous nuclear deal, JCPOA, give guarantees for the security of Iran. At the same time, Iran should not develop nuclear weapons. And the US will not attack Iran. That kind of agreement. But at the same time, we understand that there is also an Israeli role. They have a heavy influence in Washington. For example, this time, the latest attack, many people believe was led by Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. So all those factors need to take into consideration and need a long, arduous discussion and negotiation between different parties. I do personally think China could and should play a more active role of a diplomatic role here to bring the parties together to find out a way for the sake of the global economy.
Well, that's clear, and we do appreciate your time with us and giving us your insights. Dear viewers, that was Mr. Shintao Xu with us, Senior Fellow at Pangol Institution.
منظومة الاتصالات بالكويت شغالة بكفاءة عالية ولله الحمد. والهيئة العامة للاتصالات وتقنية المعلومات مستعدة لأي طارئ لا قدر الله. في ظل التوترات اللي تمر فيها المنطقة فعلنا خطط الطوارئ وعززنا التعاون مع الجهات المعنية عشان نضمن استقرار الخدمات الرقمية وسرعة الاستجابة لأي مستجد. الوضع تحت المتابعة وكل الجهات المختصة على أتم الجاهزية. عسى الله يحفظ الكويت وأهلها.
The ongoing Iranian attacks and the wider regional military escalation have also raised concerns regarding potential environmental effects in Kuwait. While no large-scale environmental disaster has been officially reported, Kuwaiti authorities and relevant ministries have acknowledged several environmental risks associated with missile interceptions, military activity and regional tensions that could affect the country's environment, infrastructure and natural resources. One of the primary environmental concerns relates to the debris generated by missile and drone interceptions. Authorities have indicated that such debris can potentially pose environmental hazards if it contains hazardous materials, fuel, residues, or explosive components. Here's the story.
Escalating violence across parts of the Middle East is generating profound and far-reaching environmental consequences, compounding an already fragile ecological landscape. Beyond the immediate human toll, the conflict is contributing to widespread environmental degradation through the destruction of critical infrastructure, the release of hazardous pollutants, and the disruption of natural resource systems essential for regional stability. Strikes on oil facilities, including those located in or near densely populated urban areas, have resulted in large-scale fires emitting thick plumes of smoke containing toxic compounds. These emissions pose immediate and long-term risks to human health, particularly for vulnerable populations such as children, while simultaneously degrading air quality across affected regions. Historical precedents demonstrate that oil fires and related incidents can leave lasting environmental legacies, contaminating air, soil, and water systems for decades. The environmental impact extends beyond atmospheric pollution. Contaminants released from fires and explosions can infiltrate soil layers, leach into groundwater, and ultimately enter agriculture systems, raising concerns over food safety and long-term ecosystem health. In marine environments, reported oil spills threaten biodiversity and coastal livelihoods, particularly in regions heavily dependent on fisheries and marine resources. Such contamination risks destabilizing already sensitive ecological balances. The conflict is also exacerbating pre-existing environmental vulnerabilities, particularly in relation to water scarcity. Several countries in the region rely heavily on desalination plants as a primary source of fresh water. Damage or disruption to these facilities could have catastrophic consequences for water security, placing millions at risk. In a region already grappling with climate stress and limited natural freshwater resources, such impacts could significantly hinder resilience and recovery efforts. The widespread use of munitions introduces additional environmental hazards. Modern weapon systems often contain heavy metals, explosive residues, and persistent chemical compounds such as PFAS, which are highly resistant to environmental degradation. Fires triggered by strikes may further release dangerous compounds, including dioxins and furans, intensifying environmental contamination. In addition to localized impacts, the broader environmental footprint of the conflict is substantial. Military operations are inherently carbon-intensive, contributing to increased greenhouse gas emissions. Disruptions to key maritime routes, particularly through the Strait of Hormuz and the Suez Canal, have forced global shipping to adopt longer routes, significantly increasing fuel consumption and emissions. Similarly, changes in aviation routes due to airspace restrictions further contribute to rising carbon outputs, amplifying the global climate burden. Prior to the escalation, several countries in the region were already facing severe environmental challenges, including air pollution, land degradation, and water scarcity. The current conflict risks reversing progress made in environmental protection and sustainability initiatives while placing additional strain on already limited resources. Environmental recovery, often deprioritized in most conflict settings, may face significant delays, further entrenching ecological damage. A growing body of research underscores the importance of integrating environmental considerations into conflict response and recovery strategies. Failure to address environmental degradation not only prolongs ecological harm, but may also undermine long-term stability and resilience. In a region where ecosystems, economies, and populations are deeply interconnected, the environmental consequences of conflict are not confined by borders, but extend across the broader Middle East and beyond.
As regional developments continue to unfold, public attention is not only focused on security and economic impacts, but increasingly on environmental and health dimensions of these events. In Kuwait, questions are being raised about air quality, pollution levels, and the potential environmental consequences of the incidents targeting energy infrastructure across the region. The state of Kuwait has long invested in advanced monitoring systems and precautionary measures to safeguard both the environment and public health. However, with evolving regional dynamics, it becomes essential to understand what risks are real and what remains under control, and how authorities are responding in real time. To help us understand and navigate these critical questions, we are now joined in the studio by Al-Ghalia Abu Al-Hassan, Sustainability and Environmental Stewardship Engineer, who will provide us expert insights into air quality conditions, monitoring systems, and the potential environmental impacts of any regional escalation. Engineer Al-Ghalia, welcome to our studio.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be in the national television.
And Engineer Ghalia, if we head straight to the point of, as we were mentioning, about environmental difficulties that have been happening the past few days, or past 2 weeks at least, there's lots of public concerns, not only about the political matter or the economic matter, but also it has extended to be around the environmental impacts and the environmental concerns, such as pollution and such as, of course, the water. Some people fear that there might be threats to power plants, there might be threat to also electricity and other things. So if we begin by the question about the people's behavior, how can it affect in managing a water crisis?
Yes, I understand during this time there's a lot of things that like we can't control, but people have an important role because they control the demand. So in a water situation or in anything, there is a supply and there is the demand. And for the supply, the authorities are monitoring 24/7 and have already built this infrastructure to hopefully continue to serve us. But as residents, we should always try to be mindful of our consumption and to be mindful of the water that we're using to be for essential uses only. Because if we all change our habits and try to reduce our water use, especially for the non-essential things, we can make a difference collectively and reduce the demand. That will reduce also the stress on our infrastructure, especially if some potentially will be compromised.
If we could stop at the supply and demand point, so you mean that the government is, for example, giving a certain amount of water to the public, for example, and the people demand a certain amount of water, right?
Yes.
They provide the public with a certain
so
amount.
Every householder, every human has a right to have water, but then sometimes we can go overboard while washing our cars or watering like turf that is like decorative. So in times like this, it's important to understand and to be conscious of our consumption and to know what is essential and keep using it and what can be used at a later time.
And if we take a look at more, now we're living in a world where there is a technologically advanced world that we're living in, and technology is used in every aspect, media, politics, economy. How can we make use of technology in managing our water use? Is this possible?
Yes, of course. So there are smart meters. Technology is a tool that we should be using because it collects data and it allows people in positions to be able to make decisions based on what is being used. So what cannot be measured cannot be efficiently managed and improved. So it's really important to understand what we're using the water for and to monitor the data using the technology, but also using technology like appliances to use more energy efficient or water efficient devices to limit our consumption.
So these smart meters, they tell you how much you have used, and could you also put a limit on them, or the government has to put a limit through the smart meter? Or how does it, can I put a limit on it, like that I use a certain amount of water for the day, or does it work like that?
Yeah, like in California or like other places that face drought, they will have like tiers. They'll tell, for example, every household or entity can use this much water like per person, but then the more you use, it will be a different price structure. So in the first tier, it's the affordable tier, the water that we need for our health and hygiene. But then the second tier or third or fourth, as we keep using more than what we need based on the numbers, they can change the pricing to reflect that.
And it's a whole technology connected from houses to the government, right?
There are different devices. Some people are more environmentally conscious and want to know even for themselves or are curious. So it can be reported or they can find out based on the bills to the government. And also, it can also be used for personal use to understand their usage.
So you advise in such times that they're helpful, the technology meters, especially during such times, that help us.
Yes, of course,
limit,
because when we understand and using data, we can make better decisions and we can just understand and maybe think of other ways in which we can reduce our consumption and demand.
And now let's get to another point where this ongoing conflict, can this conflict reshape the regional environmental policies, change, for example, priorities? So every period, the government institutions might have different priorities. So do you think there will be different priorities, whether be it environmentally or in a climate related matters? Do you think there will be different priorities?
Yes, I cannot like predict exactly what's going to happen, but I do envision, because this tension is showing us more and more that the environment and sustainability and resilience are not different goals. They're all aligned and they are part of national security. That's why if they are being targeted, because our infrastructure and how we live depends on it. So I think from now on there will be more redundancy, and I think there will be more policies to incentivize the diversification and decentralization of like diversifying our portfolios, our local energy use. For example, now most of our power is from a central source, but we have another source that's an untapped resource, which is the sun. It's available year-round in Kuwait. We have sunny days most of the year, and we can have solar power and have it decentralized, especially if it's an important area or an agricultural area, as well as other than power, using stormwater or rainwater capture, as well as reuse. So I have personally like worked on recycled water plants like in California, and we used it for irrigation and flushing. So it's important to use different types of water, using the correct type of water for the correct use case or purpose. So I think there will be more policies and incentives so that even developers, if they're going to have a new development, to keep in mind if they're going to increase the demand in a certain area, to be conscious and provide some power and water in case of emergencies.
Yeah, that's clear. And since you were mentioning about the stuff you have worked on in California and the policies you have also been mentioning that might be prioritized, let me ask you this question. Sometimes it's good to have our own policies that we come up with and be creative with and be unique about in regards with other countries. But sometimes we also, countries usually, or people or entrepreneurs, we usually learn from each other. So what can we, or how do you think we can learn from other regions, for example? What things can we learn in terms of the environment, in terms of climate policies, or anything that comes to your mind?
Yes, so in general, I think after a crisis, you learn to rebuild with a focus on resiliency, and also you would track the effectiveness of the strategies that has been implemented after the crisis. But then also it's important because other regions have different types of crisis. So in California, we have the wildfires that occur and earthquakes, as well as years of drought. So in that time, what I noticed that they were doing was using some emergency policies that they're implementing, as well as a combination of long-term planning and financial incentives to like install solar power in all locations, especially since in times of crisis, or you can store it as a battery and use it when you need it, and even give back to the grid, because the solar power increased so much, people sell it back to the grid. And just be conscious, use water-wise plants, like make sure the water you're using doesn't need as much irrigation and is still nice landscaping, but is water-wise in terms of plants. Something else that I've seen is car washes. Car washes that I've seen there all reuse their water for other things, and that's something we should also be doing in Kuwait, because car washes in general, if you're washing next to your house in the driveway, it can increase the pollutants, because if you're putting soap in addition to the dust and other things, it can go to the storm drain. But if it's in a specific area for car washing, you can use more efficient tools, because they will be higher pressure, so you'll use less water and prevent some of the pollution.
So you think even though the US has different types of natural disasters they go through, way different than we go through in Kuwait, but we can still learn and borrow from their technology, right?
Yes, I like to take inspiration from everywhere, because you don't know when you'll be inspired, and especially since they experience other conditions, but it's good to learn what's useful for environment, and some of the things are not useful, so we take what we need and implement to help our people.
Now, since we're speaking about natural disasters, let's get to air pollution. Air pollution in Kuwait, there's growing public concern. People are concerned about air pollution, and that it might be the level of air pollution might increase, especially that the Iranian have struck oil production sites in Kuwait recently. So what do you think of air pollution these days? Do you think it's high or low, or do you think that hopefully the country is maintaining the stability of it?
So regarding the air pollution in general, like without what's happening these days, Kuwait is a dry and oil-producing like nation, like other nations in this weather. So because of that, it's very dependent on the weather. When we get dust storms, things like the PM 2.5 or PM 10, the particulate matter increases, and that will indicate a lower air quality. But especially now, all the operators are alert, and they're monitoring different authorities and areas are monitoring 24/7. So the EPA has 11 stations around residential areas or in different areas, and you can actually see it on your phone per an app called AQI, which is the air quality index.
It's assessed, monitored.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
yeah.
monitored.
So I used it like today, for example. I was saying, oh, what's the air quality by my house? And then you can see the different things like the PM 2.5 and the PM 10, which is usually caused by smoke or dust. So usually I would say the air quality, even before what's happening because of our area and dust, is not always in the green zone or good. And I didn't notice like a big difference, but whatever difference is happening, we are containing it. So if there's smoke, putting that out will definitely help, and that would be just a temporary period until it disperses. So definitely something to keep in mind, and something to understand, because I know some people are curious. So for example, the NO2, if they'll see in the app, it's usually caused by traffic emissions, because people here drive cars mainly. But then if they see the SO2, it is related to the oil and refineries.
But what if air pollution worsen at a certain point, temporarily, for example?
Yes.
What piece of advice would you give to us, the people residing in Kuwait?
So the piece of advice is basically simple and straightforward things that we can do that are effective and helpful during these short-term periods if it potentially worsens. First, if it's a high pollution period, it's better to stay home and try to avoid going out. And if you have windows and doors, try to close them to make sure outdoor air is not infiltrating into your indoor air space, and you wouldn't breathe it. As well as, I think investing in air purifiers is great because it will be used and useful during these times and even before or after. It's good to have one. And if you are high risk, like you have children or elderly or respiratory issues and have to go out during these times, I recommend wearing a well-fitted mask.
Ms. Engineer Al-Ghalia Abu Hassan, is there any message you'd like to give to the Kuwaiti public and people residing here?
Yes, so I didn't think that I will be in this position. Of course, we are...
Just a general message.
Yeah, so the message is a message of reassurance and awareness. So I hope that the people of Kuwait stay safe and I'm sure that Kuwait has our health and safety as its priority.
Yes.
So just to be sure that the authorities are monitoring, and you can always stay tuned and look at the official sources, as well as I know for me, even though the authorities or the sources are doing their best, sometimes I feel like I want to also help out. So what you can do in this time to help our community and help each other is to lower our consumption by doing the indoor stuff like reducing our showers or times, or turning off the sinks when we're not using them, or using appliances that are more water efficient, as well as the outdoor use, limiting watering the decorative turf areas, as well as limiting the water fountains or any extra things that are secondary. And I just wish them all the best and hope that we all work collectively to help each other and reduce the demand, and work collaboratively with the authorities.
Thank you. And that was informative to the public, inshallah. And thank you for your insights. And Engineer Al-Ghalia Abu Hassan, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Now, dear viewers, we'll take a break and we will be back.
بتوجيهات مباشرة ومتابعة حثيثة ومتواصلة من قبل مجلس الوزراء ووزيرة الشؤون الاجتماعية الدكتورة أمثال الحويلة، سارعت وزارة الشؤون إلى وضع الخطط المسبقة التي تهدف من خلالها إلى المحافظة على مستويات المخزون الاستراتيجي من السلع المواد الغذائية والاستهلاكية، ولضمان سلاسة وسهولة تدفقها إلى الأسواق التعاونية. قامت وزارة الشؤون ممثلة بقطاع التعاون بتشكيل 6 فرق ميدانية بواقع فريق لكل محافظة، وذلك للمتابعة اليومية للتأكد من كفاية المخزون الاستراتيجي. إن هذا العمل هو ثمرة تنسيق وتخطيط مسبق مع جهات الدولة المختصة التي وضعت لضمان استدامة الأمن الغذائي في مختلف الأوقات، ودامت الكويت بحفظ الله ورعايته.
Tonight, the world is watching a rapidly escalating confrontation in one of the most critical energy corridors on the planet. US President Donald Trump said that Washington has had good and productive conversations with Iran, and he will order the military to postpone any military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure. This comes in after a 48-hour ultimatum has been issued, with Washington warning of a direct strikes on Iran's power and energy infrastructure if the Strait of Hormuz is not fully reopened. This report brings the story.
They don't know what's happening. Their Navy's gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft is all gone, it's all gone. Their radar is all gone. Their leaders are all gone.
It's probably the most significant crisis since the Arab oil embargo in the 70s. And every day it continues. It's actually beginning to look even more dramatic.
الحرس الوطني قادة وقوات دائما على استعداد وجاهزية تامة لحماية الوطن بالتعاون مع زملاء السلاح في وزارتي الدفاع والداخلية وقوة الإطفاء العام، وتقديم الدعم والإسناد لكافة جهات الدولة خاصة في أوقات الأزمات والطوارئ. ونسأل الله أن يحفظ وطننا الكويت من كل مكروه في ظل قيادته الرشيدة.
في ظل الأوضاع الراهنة، معكم اليوم وزارة التجارة والصناعة المعنية في ملف الأمن الغذائي. اليوم نطمنكم بأن الوضع التمويني مستقر تماما ولا يوجد أي نقص في المواد الغذائية الأساسية. كذلك حركة الأسواق طبيعية والسلع متوفرة في نقاط البيع والمخازن بشكل منتظم. إنتاج المياه في المصانع المحلية مستمر على مدار الساعة لضمان تلبية احتياجات الجميع. سلاسل الإمداد تعمل بشكل طبيعي وسلس ولا توجد أي عوائق في تدفق السلع إلى الأسواق، كما أن الأسواق المركزية وجميع نقاط البيع تعمل بشكل طبيعي، والجمعيات التعاونية تواصل نشاطها المعتاد دون أي تأثير. ونؤكد على الجاهزية الكاملة لخطط الطوارئ مع استمرار فرق الرقابة التجارية في متابعة الأسواق ميدانيا بشكل يومي لضمان استقرار الأسعار وتوفر السلع الأساسية فيها. لذلك اليوم احنا نطمنكم ونبشركم بأن الأمور طيبة إن شاء الله ويحافظ الله.
قوة الإطفاء العام على استعداد تام وجاهزية للتعامل مع أي طارئ على مدار الساعة من خلال مراكزها البرية والبحرية والمطارات، ونحن نعمل وفق خطط طوارئ متكاملة بتجهيزات متطورة وكوادر مدربة على أعلى مستوى لضمان سرعة الاستجابة وكفاءة التعامل مع مختلف البلاغات سواء كانت خطرة أو بسيطة. وهذا الاستعداد والجاهزية لدينا مستمرة على مدار العام حفاظاً على سلامة الأرواح والممتلكات وتحقيق الأمن المجتمعي.
تؤكد جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي جاهزيتها للاستجابة للطوارئ والكوارث في ظل الأوضاع الجيوسياسية الحاصلة في المنطقة. جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي تعمل من ضمن منظومة إنسانية متكاملة مع مؤسسات دولة الكويت من حيث الاستجابة السريعة وتجهيز المتطوعين من ضمن أفرقة مختلفة للاستجابة للطوارئ في سرعة قصوى. يعد متطوعين جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي من المتطوعين اللي تم تدريبهم مكثفاً في الإسعافات الأولية والاستجابة للكوارث والاستجابة الميدانية. تؤكد جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي جاهزيتها الميدانية ورفع جاهزيتها من حيث الاستجابة للطوارئ في حالات اللي يتم ندائها. بالنسبة للمخزون الاستراتيجي لجمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي، فإحنا على أتم الاستعداد للاستجابة في حال النداء من قبل مؤسسات حكومة دولة الكويت.
بتوجيهات مباشرة ومتابعة حثيثة ومتواصلة من قبل مجلس الوزراء ووزيرة الشؤون الاجتماعية الدكتورة أمثال الحويلة، سارعت وزارة الشؤون إلى وضع الخطط المسبقة التي تهدف من خلالها إلى المحافظة على مستويات المخزون الاستراتيجي من السلع المواد الغذائية والاستهلاكية، ولضمان سلاسة وسهولة تدفقها إلى الأسواق التعاونية. قامت وزارة الشؤون ممثلة بقطاع التعاون بتشكيل 6 فرق ميدانية بواقع فريق لكل محافظة، وذلك للمتابعة اليومية للتأكد من كفاية المخزون الاستراتيجي. إن هذا العمل هو ثمرة تنسيق وتخطيط مسبق مع جهات الدولة المختصة التي وضعت لضمان استدامة الأمن الغذائي في مختلف الأوقات، ودامت الكويت بحفظ الله ورعايته.
تؤكد وزارة الكهرباء والماء والطاقة المتجددة بأن عمليات توليد الطاقة الكهربائية وتحلية المياه تسير وفق الخطط التشغيلية المعتادة، وتؤكد الوزارة على جاهزيتها التامة للتعامل مع أي طارئ من خلال خطط متكاملة تتضمن الإجراءات الواجب اتباعها لاستمرارية الكهرباء والماء. وتوفر لدى الوزارة كفاءات وطنية مؤهلة وعلى أعلى درجات الاستعداد لتفعيل هذه الخطط متى ما دعت الحاجة. والمخزون الاستراتيجي من المياه العذبة في البلاد في ازدياد، إلى جانب توفر مخزون من المياه الجوفية، مما يعزز قدرة المنظومة الوطنية على الصمود والتعامل مع مختلف الظروف.
قوة الإطفاء العام على استعداد تام وجاهزية للتعامل مع أي طارئ على مدار الساعة من خلال مراكزها البرية والبحرية والمطارات، ونحن نعمل وفق خطط طوارئ متكاملة بتجهيزات متطورة وكوادر مدربة على أعلى مستوى لضمان سرعة الاستجابة وكفاءة التعامل مع مختلف البلاغات سواء كانت خطرة أو بسيطة. وهذا الاستعداد والجاهزية لدينا مستمرة على مدار العام حفاظاً على سلامة الأرواح والممتلكات وتحقيق الأمن المجتمعي.
While the recent wave of attacks targeting oil and gas facilities across the Gulf comes as a direct consequence of the ongoing confrontation involving Iran, the United States and Israeli occupation, the repercussions are extending far beyond the region. Countries that rely heavily on Gulf energy exports are now facing growing challenges in securing stable supplies as disruptions begin to ripple through global markets. In recent days, fuel and petroleum products prices have surged to unprecedented levels in multiple parts of the world, driven by heightened uncertainty and escalating risks to critical energy infrastructure. The latest development came with a strike on one of the region's most significant energy assets, Iran's South Pass gas field, marking a dangerous shift towards targeting the core of global energy production. In response, retaliatory actions have expanded to the scope of the conflict, with oil and gas facilities across the several Gulf countries, including Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, coming under threat. Now, to help us understand the current landscape, we are joined in the studio by Mr. Mohammed Al-Shatti, energy expert, a leading voice at the heart of international energy decision-making. Mr. Mohammed, thank you for being with us here in the studio.
My pleasure, thank you.
Thank you. Now, to head straight into the latest that's happening in the oil market. Now, how would you characterize the current phase of oil market? Are we facing a global shock, for example, or is it a security shock? Or is it both simultaneously, for example, that's happening?
Well, I believe that it is really more towards the security shock. And my argument is based on price level. Price level is a good indicator where we are. If you look into beginning of 2026, all forecasters were viewing that 2026 there will be a surplus between 1 million to 4 million barrels per day. And that have put a lot of pressure on prices. And prices were in the range of 60 to 70. Mostly it were in 65, sometimes were even lower than 60 in the 59, 58.
That's the Brent.
That's the Brent prices. And eventually we had a surplus of crude. More than and that pressured prices. But when you come into since 3rd of March, when 3 or 5 of vessels were targeted and put into fire, that really scared everybody coming or going outside the Strait of Hormuz. And we have seen the prices just moved up from 80, 85, 90, 100. They reached up to 170 and remained within us. This shows that there is a serious supplies moving out of the Strait of Hormuz. And this is basically because not because we are not producing, producers are not producing oil or cannot send the oil outside, but it is basically because there is a real threat for any movement of oil. So that means it is technically halting any movement of crude oil from the Gulf to all other markets. And you have to understand that basically when you talk about the Gulf, you're talking about the Arabian Gulf, we're talking about around 20 to 25 million barrels per day of oil, which is about one fifth of the market demand. We talk about demand in the range of 105 million barrels per day. That means this much. This is the importance of this area. So this much of oil is not anymore in the market. At best, if we talk at best, it is 5 million that is going outside the Gulf. We're talking about 15 million actually not going anywhere. And so we are talking about security shock. We are talking about supply, but that supply is really because of the situation of the whole thing that of burning vessels and making everything is difficult for a smooth oil movement that we have enjoyed for years and years from us as producers to the end customers. Now it depends really on the situation. If it's continue, it will be a disaster on everybody. But if it is still within, let's say now we're talking about 15 days. So if it increased, probably people are still talking about an issue that there might be a solution there. If the solution comes fast, that is easier to be resolved. But otherwise, it is a serious to a lot, and it is attached with a lot of risks.
Because it's been like more than 20 days now, and higher oil prices affect economies, especially if there is no production.
It's affecting economy. It's affecting inflation. It's affecting the overall industry, power stations.
Exactly. Higher inflation affects the economic activity, so that will cause the GDP.
We might have a recession, in fact.
A stagflation, some say as well. As the last Fed meeting, they talked about a stagflation possible, even though if we were far away from it, because of the oil.
Because of the oil.
And now, before we move to another point, I'd like to understand how different is disrupting the movement of routes in the Strait of Hormuz and targeting oil infrastructure, because heinous Iranian strikes have targeted and tried to target oil production sites in GCC, and we see disruption at Strait of Hormuz. Do they both increase the prices of oil, or do they differ? Some, let's say, the disruption maybe makes the price goes higher than targeting oil sites.
Let me put it this way. Targeting the infrastructure is really making higher prices for longer period of time. While stopping the movement of oil from the Gulf, from the Arabian Gulf, through the Strait of Hormuz to the different markets, especially we're talking about around 85-90% of our exports going ends in Asia, in all countries of Asia. Now, when you're talking about the infrastructure, we're talking about the actual well. We're talking about the going into the gathering center. We're talking about the pipelines. We're talking about the refineries. So if these are hit, then you need that should be recovered, and that will have a lot of time to come back. And that means even if the Strait of Hormuz come back to normal, you have here a lot of time. It could be months to be recovered and fixed and go back to normal. This is one thing. Also, with closing the Strait of Hormuz, many of our countries have took into account a strategy of closing up wells, starting with the easy ones. When I'm talking about the easy ones means when it is retained, it retains very quickly until they reach to the difficult. If the situation extended to a longer period of time, that means we are going into the difficult wells. That means the return of these wells back to production, aside from hitting the wells or the infrastructure, it will take time, maybe a month, maybe months.
Some of them take more than others, right?
Yes,
So
this is what I'm saying. Some of them are quickly coming back. Some of them goes probably to 2 months or 3 months because you are closing them. You're putting it
So
down.
even if the strait opens tomorrow, we might have another problem.
We will have another problem.
Also, there may be also a problem of insurance companies, right, at the strait?
Yes,
of
because
the
it's why vessels are not coming back to the Gulf, because they are scared, because there is no company are willing to give that insurance.
They cancelled.
Yeah, if it happens, they cancel. But if it happens, it will be under very high prices.
Because if they have insurance, it will cost them more, right?
Yes.
Okay. And also one more scenario about the force majeure that happened in Kuwait, which is cancelling the contract just to protect the state of Kuwait of not being able to deliver. Now we will get to the force majeure, but one might wonder if prices of oil is going high. For example, in Dubai reached more than 160, in Kuwait more than $150.
Yes.
So these high prices, people think that they're giving you the benefits, but can we really get the benefits since we're not delivering?
It is very limited to get the benefit while you cannot export. If I'm talking about, we should be exporting as a Gulf countries, all producers, around 20 to 25 million. Today, we are only exporting probably at the best with other conditions, probably 5 million. I'm not talking about the Kuwait, but other countries through other routes like Oman, like the Saudis. But here the Gulf, almost there is no export outside. This is why nobody is benefiting from the high prices, except for in another ways. We have in Kuwait, we have two formulas for selling crude. We have formula which is basically while you are exporting a crude in February, but the actual prices in March. Those contracts will certainly give a benefit to Kuwait. But if and also those which are sent or sold from being stored from Japan and Korea.
Yes.
Also, those can be also benefiting Kuwait because it benefit from. But these are limited. Also, you have your refinery is running. There is products. Products are going to some pockets here in the AG, in the Arabian Gulf. These also will benefit. But again, you're talking about Kuwait producing 2.6 million barrels per day, and now because of the situation, this number has been reduced to a minimal level. So the difference is big.
Yes.
So it is serious when talking about the revenues that is always coming to Kuwait, easy, and to all producers. Now producers are faced with a serious challenge that they cannot, or there is no source of revenues that is already being there.
Yeah, exactly.
Except, as I said, pockets here and there, which is also shows that people or our calibers are looking for pockets that eventually means higher revenues for Kuwait.
That's clear. Now, since you also mentioned about the East-West pipeline in Saudi Arabia, which goes through Yanbu, and there's also the alternative in UAE, which is the Fujairah one, exactly, which bypasses Strait of Hormuz. So there is alternatives, but about the state of Kuwait, maybe for the time being, there's no alternative. We rely on Hormuz. Do you think we will be relying on the reserve we have in Japan and other countries, as you said?
Well, these, as I said, it will benefit, but the benefit is minimal because the volume is minimal. Is probably I don't have a number. Probably it is in the range of 7 or 8 million barrels per day. Million barrels, not barrels per day.
Barrels, yeah.
That could be benefit, and it is benefiting. But again, if the thing is that you can face with challenges. But if the challenge is not resolved within a certain period of time, then the impact will be huge on everybody.
And now moving back to the force majeure, as we explained, this is a contractual cancellation between the state of Kuwait and its obligations that it can't deliver for the time being due to external circumstances. Could you speak of this a little more? Because some people think that it's mostly negative to Kuwait that it can't produce any oil. It has oil, but for the time being, it can't deliver through the strait. That's it, right?
Well, let's put it this way. There is a normal situation and there is a force majeure situation. The normal situation is that you have your partnership with different customers, and you are exporting crude product, LPG, gas. While for the force majeure situation, also you have two types of contracts. You have FOB, which means the customer comes back to Kuwait with his ship and takes the delivery from Kuwait. And there is the C&F delivery. C&F means Kuwait has the ship, put the oil into the ship, and then the vessel goes back to the customer. But there are different in the pricing. But here the force majeure is on the C&F, not the FOB. Most of our crudes are on FOB. So the situation, of course, it's what I am saying is that it is a normal, because all producers this is the practice of the industry.
This is the normal practice.
A normal practice in such a situation, and we have done it in the past.
In decades back.
Yes.
Back in decades. Yeah.
Yes. So when we had the force majeure, it is there. It is so it is a practice between customers. It will not impact Kuwait per se.
It protects us.
It protects us and protects, because there is a contract between the buyer and the seller which governs all of these relationships. But what it means for the whole Gulf, really, again, we're going back to, it's a security shock. For the first time, it's not a supply shock. It is not because here we have big reserves, large, huge reserves. We have big production. We have also spare capacity. In fact, all the spare capacity is in this area. Wherever you go, here we have oil that is needed by the world and by the consumers. This is why you see all this attention, even though the fight is between three parties or two parties. It is everybody is trying to interfere to reach a solution, whether it's through ensuring or proposing assurance of the smooth movement of vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, or trying to talk to the Iranian regime to ensure the safe movement, or even pressuring that this move, because when you talk about all countries are in need, they are in need for the oil. So this is why I would argue that this cannot stay for long. It has to be resolved, because it is in the benefit of the world economy, all countries, even the industry, the power. It is an essential energy that is needed for all the world.
Hopefully that's clear. Mr. Mohammed, this is informative, but if you excuse us, we'll just take a quick phone call with our correspondent in Washington, and we will continue our discussion with you. As tensions continue, dear viewers, to escalate in the Gulf region, global attention is increasingly focused on developments surrounding the Strait of Hormuz and the broad implications for energy security and regional stability. In Washington, political and military circles are closely monitoring the situation, particularly following the latest statements and warnings issued by the United States toward Iran. These developments raise critical questions about the next phase of the crisis, the risks facing allied nations, and the measures being taken to safeguard vital infrastructure across the region. And to better understand the strategic calculations behind Washington's response, we now turn to our correspondent in Washington, Dalia Al-Koumi, who brought us the latest insights and analysis.
In Washington, the reported 48-hour ultimatum attributed to Donald Trump is being received with a mix of support and concern. On one hand, the supporters, particularly among Republican hawks, argue that a hard deadline reinforces US credibility and could force Tehran to back down quickly. Critics, on the other hand, including some Democrats and foreign policy veterans, warn that striking Iran's power infrastructure would mark a major escalation and risk triggering a wider regional conflict. Overall, the mood is that this is a high-stakes coercive move, but on that significantly narrows the space for diplomacy if Iran does not comply. Well, Washington is taking Iran's threats against Gulf energy and desalination facilities very seriously, especially for the vulnerable partners and allies in the Middle East. US officials are actively discussing air and missile defense reinforcement, intelligence sharing, and rapid response coordination with Gulf states. There is also particular concern about asymmetric attacks like drones, missiles, cyber, targeting critical infrastructure such as oil export terminals and water desalination plants. While the US has provided reassurances of support, privately there is recognition that full protection is difficult, taking into consideration, of course, the proximity of Iran with the allies, especially against large-scale or coordinated attacks. In short, we can say contingency planning is underway, but the vulnerability of key infrastructure remains a central concern during this war. Well, despite the visible buildup, carrier strike groups, Marines, advanced aircraft, the United States Department of Defense continues to publicly frame the posture as deterrence and force protection. However, behind the scenes, we can say there is growing acknowledgement that the current deployment provides credible offensive options, not just defensive coverage. Planning scenarios reportedly include expanded air campaigns, limited strikes on strategic targets. A full ground invasion remains unlikely at this stage, but contingency planning for escalation is clearly in place, particularly if Iran continues to escalate and refuses to go back to a negotiating table or try to reach out to end the war. Bottom line, Washington is still publicly signaling deterrence, but operationally preparing for a broader conflict if escalation continues from Iran's side.
Dalia Kumi, our correspondent in Washington, thank you for the insight. Now, dear viewers, we continue our discussion with our dear guest, special guest here, Mr. Mohammed. We're back. We were speaking about Kuwait and the force majeure and how it protects Kuwait, of course. Now, let's shift a bit to the US side. There's been statements as Donald Trump, the US president, said that the increase in oil prices does benefit the US. Some argue that it partially benefits the US. We see there is high oil and fuel prices in the US, but at the same time, we see a spread between what they call the crack spread between the WTI, which is the US oil, and the Brent. So, for example, now I think it's the highest in 11 years. It's about $12 or $14. It reached about that. So the refineries in US, the observers say that refineries in US, they, for example, they make products, okay? They buy products based on the US price, which is about $90, for example, yeah? And then they sell it, linking it to the Brent price, which is $112 or $13. So per barrel, they get the crack spread, which is $14. So that makes, let's say, tens of millions or maybe reach billions of dollars. So do you think this is a thing that where refineries make money from the crack spread?
Yeah, of course. When you talk about refinery margins, the margin of the refinery is basically the crude of buying crude, the price of buying crude versus the overall price of producing products. Because eventually, what is the refinery? The refinery is basically taking a crude, refining in the refining, and producing the different product slate starting from LPG, gasoline, kerosene, jet, gas oil, diesel, fuel oil. So eventually, if that products, as you said, the cracks between the two crudes, which is basically the benchmark crudes, it's WTI and Brent. It can be, and it encourage the refining to increase their runs, because eventually they will take a lot of products with a higher prices, selling it into Europe where it is in need with the whole situation. Because here you're not talking, when the Russian situation or the Russian invasion of Ukraine, 22, and it has stopped all the Russian gas. It has also stopped the Russian diesel into Europe, and Europe is a big importer of diesel. This is why, if you remember, countries like Kuwait, like Saudis, have benefited from moving the diesel from our side of the world to Europe with the higher prices. Now the US is doing the same, because here we have the situation in the Gulf, and because of some refiners have been hit, so they cannot produce, or their production is lower, or even the means and the route to send it to Europe are not there.
So it's like history is repeating itself in different regions.
In different regions. It's basically, in such a situation, usually what changes is the pattern of trade. When Russia could not sell to gas or crude to Europe, it went back to the east with the lower prices, to China and to India. When gas was not there, it came back to here. Qatari gas went back to Europe because supplementing the Russian gas into Europe. So this is basically, it is these situations that the market cope with it in a certain way. It's called the trade patterns, and people benefit because of the arbitrage is open, and whoever it is, whether it's a refiner or producer, will get a higher prices. Here, probably the main beneficiary is, yes, the US. But again, also it has to be, we have to understand, we're talking about only 20 days. Some people, 20 days with the higher prices than 100. Some people would go that the US will get a replacement for, or they recover their cost of the war in the Gulf. No, it's not this. It is only 20 days. So it is or governments with a budget, they will get a lot of revenues. No, because the government is, you have a 1 year budget when you budget against 70 or 75. But here we're talking about only a few days. Yes, if the problem
if it extends, then they would make billions. But we're only speaking about 24 days now.
Yes.
Yeah. Now let's move to OPEC and how it makes decisions. We'd like to understand more about OPEC and how it differentiates between, let's say, a geopolitical shock, a temporary geopolitical shock, and a supply or structural supply shortage. How do we understand OPEC's view on this?
See, OPEC have OPEC and OPEC Plus. When talking about OPEC, we're talking about 12 countries. When talking about OPEC Plus, we're talking about 22 countries. Certainly, they have done a big role into balancing the world and ensuring the supplies of energy security to the whole world since the Corona time until now. And lately, what they have done, and this is of course through monitoring the market. And they have a lot of ways of monitoring the market, whether it is on an annual basis. They have the WOO, which is the World Oil Outlook, in which they will look into the world for the next until 2050. They have also a strategic studies in which they will look into such hurdles, whether it is structural or it is temporary, and what to do against them. Now, when talking about the whole situation now, it is not a structural. It is really, and OPEC or the producer have nothing to do with it, in fact. And this is why there is little that OPEC can do. Eventually, what OPEC is doing is really they are ensuring that we invest in the oil, we invest in the gas, we invest in the renewable energy. We also have a spare capacity. We invest into increasing our reserves. We invest in the different infrastructure, ensuring that we have higher output. We're talking about the refining of clean energy. So all of this is being done. Also, we if under normal situation, always there is a monthly meeting between the oil ministers just to check the word or the market, where we are going. Do the market is in surplus or in shortage? What OPEC should we do? And this is what has been done. The last meeting, in fact, it was on the 1st of March, in which OPEC 8, G8, OPEC 8, the countries who are responsible for the voluntary cuts, they have agreed to increase their production by 206,000 barrels per day, effective April. But unfortunately, these unforeseen situations, these are situations in which we are in. We have nothing to do with it, though we have everything or every willingness, every strategy to ensure that the customer reach as an end result, reach its requirement of crude and products.
Could this situation that's happening, if it's, for example, goes for a long time, could it change organizations' outlook in 2026 or 2027?